He got caught sleeping in class by his teacher. Instead of blowing up at him right away, the teacher offered him a deal: answer a few questions correctly, and he could go back to sleep. The questions were actually pretty easy, but Kyle couldn't answer a single one. Faced with such an unmotivated student, the American teacher began patiently trying to get through to him. But before he could even finish what he was saying, Kyle suddenly lost it and started throwing punches and kicks at him. Because he'd assaulted a teacher, Kyle was quickly brought before juvenile court. According to the regulations, he should have spent a year in juvenile detention, but the judge ended up giving him just 3 months, and he only had to serve it under house arrest. The reason for the lenient sentence was that Kyle actually had an understandable reason for snapping. It had happened just a few days earlier. Kyle and his dad had gone fishing together, and they'd had a great haul. They were both in high spirits. On the drive home, Kyle was behind the wheel, sharing all the fun moments of the day with his mom over the phone. The whole family was happy. But because his attention was divided, he accidentally got into a car accident. When Kyle managed to crawl out of the wreck, he discovered that his father had died. This tragedy weighed heavily on him, and he just couldn't let it go. It sent him into a deep depression. The reason he'd lashed out in class was because the teacher had mentioned his father.
What would your father think?
The teacher hadn't meant any harm by it, but it had touched Kyle's rawest nerve and made him snap instantly. As a result, he had to face the consequences of his actions. 3 months of house arrest. To make sure he didn't sneak off, the police fitted an ankle monitor on him. If he went more than 30 meters from the house, the green light would turn red. If he didn't get back within range in 10 seconds, the device would immediately alert the authorities. The monitor was waterproof and tamper-proof too. The only way to get rid of it was to wait out the full 3 months. While that might sound like a long time, it wasn't too bad for Kyle. He spent his days sleeping and playing video games, basically treating his sentence like a vacation. But his good times came to an abrupt end just a few days later thanks to his mom. She cut the internet cable, canceled the TV service, and told Kyle to clean every room in the house. Kyle had been spoiled his whole life. He'd never had to lift a finger. There was no way he was going to do all that dirty, exhausting housework. He just brushed off his mom's demands with some half-hearted excuses. But without the internet and TV to keep him entertained, Kyle's days became unbearably boring. The ankle monitor only made him more frustrated. With nothing to do, his only option was to stare out the window to pass the time. One day, he noticed a new family moving in next door. It was nothing special, really, but Kyle watched with unusual interest, because they had a daughter. She had long blonde hair and a slender figure. He couldn't make out her face from where he was, but he was already captivated. Suddenly, the doorbell snapped him out of his daydream. He opened the door and saw what looked like a fire right on his doorstep, so he instinctively started stomping on it. After a couple of stomps, though, something fell off. It was just a burning paper bag with something inside it.
Stop shit.
It turned out to be 2 neighborhood kids. They knew Kyle was stuck at home, so they'd come over to mess with him. Not only that, but they also stood there hurling insults at him, which made him absolutely furious. When the 2 kids took off running, Kyle chased after them without thinking. But just 3 minutes into the chase, his ankle monitor started beeping. That's when Kyle realized he'd gone out of bounds. He immediately turned around and sprinted back home. When the light finally turned green again, he let out a sigh of relief. What he didn't expect, though, was how sensitive the device was. Shortly after he got back, a police car pulled up in front of his house. Even though Kyle kept explaining what had happened, the officers followed protocol and took him in anyway. And of course, all the neighbors saw the whole thing. Luckily, since it was his first violation, the police just gave him a warning and didn't pursue it further. Right at that moment,